Truong suddenly returned after months apart. He was still thin, but his eyes carried countless unspoken emotions. Tieu Nu froze for a moment, then couldn't hold back. She ran into his arms, holding him tightly, in an embrace filled with longing and love that had been buried for so long. Neither of them said a word. Only the sound of their hearts beating together broke the silence. But beneath that moment of happiness, a secret still lingered inside. Tieu Nu was a tiny life growing, and she wasn't sure if Truong could accept that truth. Would this tearful reunion mark a new beginning? Or would it be the start of an emotional storm waiting to unfold? Stay tuned to discover the answer. Hidden behind Truong's deep, searching gaze, the morning was quiet. The wind paused by the porch, and soft sunlight fell over the old tiled roof. Truong came back a return no one expected. He stood there thin and worn, his face marked by time, but his eyes still carried the same warmth they once had. When Tieu Nu heard that familiar voice, her heart skipped a beat. She rushed outside, then froze. Truong was there so close, yet it felt like a dream. Every emotion she'd kept buried suddenly broke free. She ran into his arms, tears falling like rain after a long drought. In that embrace, she could feel his heartbeat, his breath, everything so familiar, everything she had longed for through endless nights of missing him. All those months of waiting, all the lonely days, now they melted away in that single moment, leaving only the warmth of the man she loved. Truong smiled softly, a distant look in his eyes, as if he were hiding something. Tieu Nu didn't notice. She only knew he was home, and that was enough. Her heart filled with simple joy, wishing only that he would stay, that all the pain of the past would fade away with the wind. She hurried inside, calling for Dewey, the little brother who always asked about Truong and dreamed of seeing him again. "Just wait for me a second," she said, glancing back at him, a smile still on her lips. But when she stepped back into the yard, he was gone. The yard was empty. The wind suddenly picked up swirling dust into the air. Tieu Nu stood still, her eyes wide in disbelief. Where Truong had been, only a few glittering specks of dust remained in the sunlight. She called his name, her voice trembling, then panicked, running around, searching. "Truong, Truong." Her voice echoed into the still air, then faded with the wind. Her heart tightened painfully. She didn't know if she had been dreaming or if he had truly come back only to say goodbye one last time. His warmth still lingered on her shoulders, but he was gone as if he had never existed. In that moment, she sank to the ground, clutching her shirt, tears mixing with the dirt. The pain was heavy, almost unbearable. Maybe Truong had come back for just a moment, only to tell her that he was still with her, even if only in another form. Tieu Nu sat silently staring into the distance where the sunset was fading. In her heart, the longing still burned, but so did a fragile hope that somewhere out there, Truong was still watching over her, still loving her, just like he always had. Tieu Nu jolted awake, sweat dampening her forehead. The room was still bathed in the soft light of early morning, and the sound of birds outside the window gently pulled her back to reality. Her heart was still pounding, and the image from her dream hadn't faded yet. Truong, standing there looking at her with warmth in his eyes before slowly fading into dust. It had felt so real, as if she could still feel the warmth of his embrace, his breath against her ear. But when she looked around the small room, there was only silence, a chill in the air, and the steady breathing of Dewey her little boy curled up beside her. Dewey stirred his sleepy eyes, blinking open, a bright smile appearing as soon as he saw his mother. He began mumbling, the usual innocent questions, the kind that always made tieu nu's heart ache. He asked about his superhero shirt, about Uncle Truong, the man he thought of as part of his childhood memories, even though he never truly understood why that person was gone. Tieu nu leaned down and gathered Dewey into her arms. A faint smile touched her lips, but her eyes were filled with quiet sorrow. She gently told him, her voice trembling, that Uncle Truong was working far away, and that he'd come back one day with gifts, just like he promised. Dewey nodded happily, wrapping his tiny arms around her neck, chattering on, unaware that every word cut deeper into her heart. The little routines of everyday life were her way of holding on to peace, of forgetting the dream she just had, the dream where Truong had returned, only to leave once more. When Dewey reached up, asking to be carried, tieu nu bent down and held him tightly, as if letting go would make the whole world fall apart. She lowered her head, hiding the tear that slipped from the corner of her eye. Inside, her memories of Truong remained untouched, his smile, his voice, his eyes. But she knew she couldn't live in that dream forever. She had to keep moving forward for Dewey, for the child who carried within him a piece of the man she once loved more than anyone. Tieu nu carried a bamboo basket as she walked along the red dirt path leading to the eggplant field at the edge of the village. Each step left a mark of time, just like her life, rough and full of challenges, yet never standing still. The morning sun filtered through the trees, lighting up her sun-kissed face, where beads of sweat had begun to roll down. The purple field stretched out before her rows of eggplants, heavy with fruit glistening under the soft light. She bent down her familiar hands, gently lifting each one carefully, picking and placing them into the basket. Every time her fingertips brushed the smooth skin of an eggplant, her heart tightened a little. This was where she and Truong once worked together, laughing, talking, and dreaming of a simple future. Now she stood alone in that same field, his words echoing faintly in the wind like an old song. The breeze stirred her blouse, carrying with it the scent of soil and memories. She stopped for a moment, looking up at the clear blue sky. The clouds drifted slowly, just like that afternoon years ago, when Truong left without promising to return. She didn't feel anger, only a quiet emptiness inside. Maybe somewhere far away, he too was looking at the same sky, thinking of the girl who still quietly picked eggplants as she once did. The sun climbed higher, sweat dotted her forehead, but tieu nu kept working. Each eggplant she placed in the basket felt like wrapping up a memory, gently, patiently, just as she was learning to love life again, even without him beside her. When the basket was full, she stood up and looked around the wide garden. Everything was the same, only the people had changed. She smiled softly, a hint of sadness in her eyes. Perhaps her longing for Truong would never fade, but it had grown gentler, like the deep purple of the eggplant's tender yet warm. On her way to the market, the wind brushed through her hair, carrying the scent of eggplants in the countryside. Holding the basket close, she told herself, silently, no matter how much the past lingers, she will keep moving forward for Dewey, for tomorrow, and for the man she once loved, Truong. The road to the market was as familiar as ever. The afternoon breeze brought the smell of hay and the chirping of birds. Tieu nu stopped midway up a small hill, and looked at the sky, now painted in shades of soft purple. That color reminded her of Truong, the man she once loved with all the faith of her youth. Now that memory no longer hurt. It had become part of her breath, quiet but heavy with meaning. She knew life wouldn't be easy. She would still have to wake up early, carry eggplants to the market, and smile at strangers as if there were no sadness inside her. But as long as Dewey kept smiling, holding her hand, and calling Mom, every hardship was worth it. Tieu nu kept walking her shadow, stretching long under the sunset. The wind blew gently, carrying with it the scent of eggplants and old memories. She didn't know what the future would bring, or if Truong would ever come back. But one thing was certain: tomorrow she would keep going. She would live love and stay strong for Dewey, and for a love that never truly faded.